And joining us, Reverend Michael Faulkner and former Congressman Alan West. And first to you, Congressman, good evening, I should say, to both of you. And first to you, Congressman, these are your old stomping grounds, the House of Representatives. Was it appropriate or inappropriate to use the House floor for this demonstration?
I think it was clearly inappropriate, Greta, because one of the things we have to understand, why are members of the Congressional Black Caucus promoting a false narrative? We know from the forensic evidence, we know from all of the evidence and the testimony that has been released by a prosecutor, Mr. McCullough, out in St. Louis County, that it was not a case of hands up and don't shoot. And Michael Brown never raised his hands. And that, you know, you cannot have people that are putting out this false information and once again, you know, truly deceiving the American people. And furthermore, if the Congressional Black Caucus doesn't want to be silent, why aren't they talking about all the deaths and the shootings of young black men in Chicago? Why aren't they talking about the decimation of the black family? Why aren't they talking about the 25 small businesses that were burned to the ground that did not participate in Small Business Saturday? Those are the real issues that they should be talking about, not the politicized issue that they're taking up.
And I agree with you on the second part about, you know, why aren't we talking about the issues in the many other places across the country. But in terms of the hands-up part, is that, you know, I did some more research on it, and I'm very deferential to grand juries. Whatever grand juries or even petty juries decide, they hear all the facts. But 16 people testified that there were hands up. 2 were asked about it, another 2, and they said no hands up. 8 were not asked specifically, but they did not volunteer that there were any hands up, and 3 said they didn't know. So there was conflicting testimony, at least in the grand jury, about hands up or not, but that's certainly not all the evidence. There's a lot more to be considered. But let me go to you, Reverend Faulkner. Appropriate or inappropriate using the House floor?
Greta, I understand the gesture, but we've got to get beyond the gestures. We've got to go to a national dialogue about race. And if we miss this opportunity right now in America, shame on all of us. We are at a crossroads that we've never been at before. Every time a young black man gets shot in the streets by a white police officer, it separates us, it divides us. We need unity now. And I expect our leadership in the Congressional Black Caucus and in the White House and in the state houses across this nation to begin a dialogue of unity, not separation. Gestures such as the ones that we see don't do it enough. It does not come enough. The protests will not bring us together. We need to come together now with a national dialogue about race and the cultural divide that we're facing in our nation.
Congressman West, was this an issue of racism, or is this sort of the wrong, lack of a better word, poster child for such an important issue as racism? Or was this a racism issue?
Of course it was not a racism issue. You know, Darren Wilson was responding to a call previous to the incident with Michael Brown about a small little girl in the community. And then he got the subsequent call on the issue of Michael Brown. But the important conversation we should be having are the consequences of the actions that Michael Brown took. Michael Brown, with not any doubt, not any debate, committed several felony offenses. He robbed a store, he assaulted a store owner, he attacked a police officer, he charged at a police officer. And again, I just don't understand why we always have to defer to this discussion about race when we should be talking about respect and regard for law enforcement, respect and regard for the rule of law, understanding and respect for our judicial and our due process. We are moving away from, you know, the discussion of the policies that have resulted in the crumbling of the inner city and the destruction of the black family. And therefore you have these issues.
The reason that we do come back to race every time is because when this happens and we begin to see that the similarities in case after case, year after year, of young black men in urban America being shot by police officers, it opens up the divide, regardless of the facts of the case.
Reverend, let me just ask you one quick question.
Why don't we talk about young black men shooting young black men?
We get to
why don't we talk about young black men shooting young black men?
I agree with that 100%. But what happens is we begin to separate where we can no longer hear reason, where we can no longer trust grand juries. And that is the real unsafe element.
Yes. I don't, I'm deferential to grand juries. Those grand jurors, whether you agree with the decision or not, I've never met a jury, and I've tried lots of cases where the jurors didn't try their best. And then everyone comes in and second guess who hasn't seen all the evidence. And I think that's grossly unfair to them. But, the fact is that people are not really focusing part of it on the fact that this started as a rather bullying or obnoxious robbery by the decedent. That's no reason that he should be shot, but that's really been left out of the discussion.
Absolutely. The discussion is not, the discussion really, to be honest with you, as tragic as this death is, the discussion needs to go beyond this. We need to use this as a springboard, perhaps, for the real discussion. And it's unfortunate that it has to revolve around this particular case. I served on the grand jury. I understand, Greta. I believe in the grand jury process as much as you do, because I saw how we dialogued, how we debated, how we argued,
and people
how,
work hard.
Absolutely, people do work hard,
and people work very hard on those.
But as a nation, we have got to get to the discussion. We have no one in the middle.
And
it's unfortunate we have no one in the middle.
And I agree, and that's where really, is really, I'm going to take the last word on it. We really need leadership and not people sort of picking sides for the sake of picking sides, which oftentimes, regrettably, on any of these issues, some of that does happen, and it's very painful. But gentlemen, I'm taking the last word on that.
We don't need to spend $250 million to say that we need to retrain police either.
No, we don't. And
okay,
God
you
help
get the
us
last word.
if we can't come to some resolution on this.